Try that again.
That's the Cure, right?
Sort of. I messed it up a little bit, but kind of something like that.
So that sounds something like the Cure, I would say. Yeah. So welcome to Local Pickup. I'm Jason Broadwater.
I'm Chris Gervais.
And this is a 1969 Gretsch 6120 Nashville. Chet Atkins. The name just keeps going.
One of the coolest, most iconic, important guitars of all time.
The 6120, yes, is absolutely that. And it had a whole life from like 1952 all the way up through the early 70s, and then was reborn with Brian Setzer, Stray Cats. And so this is a hollow body guitar. Two pickups that are like Filtertron style pickups. They got that shimmery thing, and they got that heavy, and they got a snappy quality that you'd hear in like rockabilly.
Yeah.
Right, so they got adopted early. So they worked with Chet Atkins to build this guitar. Chet Atkins was a country guitarist, phenom. You know what I mean? He would play. He wouldn't sing at all. He would just play, and that would be the whole concert. Him playing guitar.
Very specific style and sound that he influenced. There's
twang.
Like a lot of older, much older men or whatever that are. A lot of people love Chet Atkins of every age, but generally when you hear like an elderly man or an elderly person, pick up a guitar and play something, it's probably some variation of Chet Atkins.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And he was just, and that was back in the day of just the kind of guitar genius guy. Like there was Les Paul, and then there was Chet Atkins. Well, Chet Atkins, came from Poe country. You know what I mean? And and he was a phenom. He was just amazing. And he was playing a D'Angelico that was made in New York, handmade guitar that he had customized, and that was what he played. And Gretsch approached him and was like, we want to work with you. They gave him one of their existing guitars. He was like, I like it, but I like my guitar. And they were like, well, let's make it be whatever you want it to be. So he started designing the guitar with them, and got a prototype in the early 50s. And it was the first 6120, and loved it, had all kinds of crazy, so he added all kinds of stuff, like this kill switch, this is just turns the guitar on and off. You mind if I hold it here for a second?
Please do.
It just turns the guitar on and off. You've got a master volume, and you've got independent volume controls on these, and you've got a selector switch that would select whether you're on the neck pickup or bridge pickup, and then you have a tone switch, which is interesting. Instead of a tone knob, I'm kind of prefer a tone knob, but that's interesting. And then you got this mute here that you can engage that mutes the strings. He was doing that like
that Nashville kind of
and
textural.
Theoretically, it's because most people would mute it here with their palm, but it frees your hand to be, picking.
Obviously you can having your palm back there slows you down a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So, but it's got a great sound. It's real thick on the neck pickup. And then It's got a thin but nice quality on the bridge pickup. So he worked with Chet Atkins worked with Gretsch to design this guitar, and then it had real F holes at the time, and it's a hollow body guitar, and he wanted it to be solid body because of the feedback. And they were like, well, you know, what if we just close in the top of the body so you still get that sustain of a hollow body, and we just paint these on. So that was a compromise they came up with.
Yeah, because the open body, or the physically open body, it's what gives the actual body more sort of depth and loudness or whatever. And it does translate to what comes through the pickups, but the issue is feedback.
It's
And
feedback,
I don't know
yeah,
the physics,
right.
audio physics of what
Yeah,
makes
I
that
don't
happen.
either, yeah.
But I had always heard that because I
Yeah.
always loved it. I thought hollow body guitars are so cool, and everyone always be like, yeah, but they get feedback if you want to
It
get loud.
does. They really do, and I've had the experience of that happening. Even a what's called a semi-hollow body guitar, which would have a solid middle piece and then have hollow wings, like a Gibson 335 has that, can still get a little bit of feedback, but that solid body is supposed to, solid middle is supposed to get rid of the feedback. But this is a fully hollow that has some like kind of support systems and bracings on the inside to cut down on feedback, and then they sealed up the F-hole and just painted it on for that purpose. But I mean, I always I think it's in the mid '50s where they switched to not having the real holes, and I think one of my holy grail guitars is those early '50s where they still had the hole, even though Chet didn't want the holes.
Yeah.
It's just cool that they were there. I don't know.
I think there's something very cool about them being painted
Oh,
on.
really?
Especially because what year is this again?
69.
69.
Yeah.
There's something, if this was made in like 2005, I don't think I'd like those.
Right.
But the fact that it was made in the 60s and those were put there, like, I think is really cool. I know
Right.
that's funny, but like it's different to me.
Well, so it's funny, man. So like Gretsch was in Brooklyn, right? And so when they decided to make this guitar, partner with Chet, who was
Yeah.
good old boy, they were like, oh, we'll put, cowboy stuff on it. Like they originally
He's
had
a
a big
cowboy.
Yeah, it had a big G brand, and
Yeah.
they had like horns on the thing here, and that they even had horns in the inlays and
Yeah.
stuff. They went over the top on like, yeah, we'll make it be
Yeah.
a cowboy.
Yeah.
But I love that stuff. One of my dream guitars is an early '50s big G branded like steers on it. Yeah, like cowboy stuff.
It's what's for dinner.
Exactly. It's just awesome. But it was and Chet, he kept getting them to dial that stuff back. And then you get to the 69, which is more of where Chet wanted it to be. It's simpler in a lot of ways. It doesn't have the horns and stuff. Doesn't have the brand.
And it has that at the time.
closed.
So in the 60s, this probably looked kind of modern and futuristic. It's got that
Right.
Vegas kind of googie style, like pizzazz to it.
Absolutely. And the finish, this now famous Western Orange, was come up with by Mr. Gretsch, just because he thought it was different than anything on the market. Well, now it's become just iconic. I mean,
succeeded at that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I guess technically it's kind of a 335 shape, sorta, but I have such a specific, I mean, these obviously are way fatter than the cutaways on
yeah.
335, but I have such a specific idea of Gretsch as the other super cool guitar.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna put a theory here in the local pickup. I'm gonna edit it out if it sounds ridiculous. And it's going way, way nerd here. I'm gonna go super nerd here. A little less nerdy now that the Mandalorian show is out. I think that the Gretsch Chet Atkins Nashville is the Boba Fett of guitars.
really?
Yeah, like
Interesting.
if Darth Vader is the Les Paul and Luke Skywalker is the Strat, and Han Solo is the Telly.
Wow,
I think this is
that-
Boba Fett.
You just rattled that off that sounded gospel. That you nailed each of those.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But
Yeah.
I think that the Chet Atkins is that other guitar
It's the
that
Boba Fett.
once upon a time, now it's different, but once upon a time, it was only a specific person that knew Boba Fett.
I've
That's
never been more moved.
good. He's never been more moved. I'm glad
is
if he gets
genius.
it, you'll get it. No one gets it. I'm just kidding. Local man, not gotten.
Show canceled.
Yeah.
Local show canceled when not gotten. Dude, that is genius. It is the Boba
Boba
Fett.
Fett, yeah. And it's so cool looking, and
Yeah.
there's so much stuff going on.
And
Like, what the
man,
hell does all that stuff do?
Luke is totally a Strat.
Oh,
Han is a
absolutely a
Telly.
Strat. Han's a
You
Telly.
nailed
Yeah,
this, dude.
got it. Darth
Yeah.
Vader's Les Paul.
A black beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
With 3 pickups.
Yeah, I just figured all that out just now.
That is genius. Like,
Whatever.
dude, that
Yeah,
was-
I think we're gonna have a lot of views because of that.
seriously, this is gonna change everything, guys.
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah. That's so pretty, man.
That's a beautiful guitar in a lot of ways.
And then very nice.
Yeah, it's funny because I've always thought of it too as the sort of bodybuilder cousin of the Telecaster, because it's a beefier.
How many metaphors can you put
I have a lot
into
I got a lot of thoughts about the Gretsch Chet Atkins Nashville. I thought about it a long time. It's related to the Telecaster in a lot of ways. Very similar sounds. I mean, it's one of the marks of the Telecaster.
but lifts, bruh.
But it lifts, bro, and like keeps up with nutrition. And the Telly's just like eating whatever. Just like eat
Whatever.
whatever.
All fries.
Do you think this thing eats Taco Bell every day? No. Nice. But it is. It's because the Telly has that sort of like big Nashville snap kind of to the clean channel, but
Yeah.
it can rock and roll. It's the same thing with the Gretsch. It's just to me, it's just a beefier version of all that. And to me, it's a little wilder and cooler
Yeah,
and
it
open than
is.
the Telecaster. But
Well, it got adopted early on by a wilder and cooler crowd. I
Yeah.
mean, where the Telly, came out in California with Fender, and quickly got into kind of the country crowd that became kind of the Bakersfield scene and the cowboy country and stuff. And the Gretsch quickly got turned into the rockabilly crowd, which
Yeah.
was the other side of the tracks. Like the cigarettes rolled up in your sleeve, and like the James Dean crowd.
Yeah.
Dwayne Eddy and those people were
Yeah.
all playing Gretches.
which is what brought that back in the
Yeah.
80s. And with
right, so
Brian
Setzer was
Setzer.
calling back to that.
Yeah,
same,
and it was that energy of like, which that whole thing was about. That's really good stuff, and we're not done with it.
absolutely,
And
yeah.
Brian Setzer nails that thing of like, because now I was introduced to the Gretsch as a clean reverby, that Chris Isaak kind of like dreamy reverb,
Right.
plucky guitar, pseudo Nashville. But it also, a lot of punk bands play either a 335, like Tim from Rancid would play 335s and Chet Atkins and stuff, and there's something sort of loud and raucous and punk rock about it. And not a lot of guitars, like I said, only other maybe like the Telecaster has that thing where like it completely is that clean reverb thing, but also is completely that rock and roll loud distortion thing.
I feel like when I play this guitar, I mean, I love playing it clean, but I want to crank this guitar and make it overdriven. I think it's got just like a beefy. that you could really rock out with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love it, dude. I love it.
Yeah. It's
Just
one of the
iconic.
all-time greats.
Yeah, it really is. It's on the list for sure. And the neck is just great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of my favorite necks. It's like, so like newer Gibsons that have that kind of flat profile on the back of the neck.
Like an Ibanez.
Yeah, feels okay. And then like some of them are too chunky, but this guitar, some of my favorite Gibsons have a neck just like this. And I don't know what year, I can't think of, nail that down. But I hadn't played many Gretches, but I played a lot of Gibsons, and I've had the variation of like a slim neck and a thick neck and chunky neck. When I find a Gibson that has a neck like this guitar does, it's like a keeper, So this, I don't know if all Gretches over the years have this same neck, but it's a great neck profile.
It does. It's that sort of compromise of it. If you feel like the power of that baseball bat neck, but it is still playable.
It's thin, yeah. It's
Yeah.
fast and thin, but
it feels powerful.
Yeah, it really
to give you
does.
that. We've talked about that a lot on the local pickup because we're not shredders. So we come at the guitar from that sort of emotional, feeling-based thing, and this one just has that in spades. It can make you
does.
feel a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Very cool, man. All right, well, that's the Gretsch 6120, and this local pickup.